talk about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love. Yes, I got fears. Fear of plane crash. Fear of car crash. Oh, fear of sex. Fear of alcohol.
So I just got done watching a documentary about Charles Manson through the eyes of one of his family members, Linda Kasabian. It is titled Manson, and it's from 2009, I believe. So I think I saw it before, but I rewatched it. Just an exceptional portrayal, actors, actresses. Really the best documentary on Manson that I saw, and that's just my opinion. So anyhow, I wanted to talk about Manson for a while because he is such an intriguing figure in not just true crime but history in general. And you know, I remember reading books about Manson, Helter Skelter, and then Manson's own autobiography. I think Neil Edmonds or Emmons or something wrote that with Manson while he was in prison. I read that. So he was the first, not serial killer, but he was the first murderer that I started to learn about in my upbringing. I was probably 15, 16 years old. So that's how I started getting into true crime and mysteries, and ended up in law enforcement as a detective and so on and so forth. So he was my introduction. You know, for a long time, I stayed away from watching documentaries, true crime shows, stuff like that, because kind of like if you lived it, you don't necessarily want to watch it, I guess. I think maybe I talked to a tattoo artist one time, Dean Jones, who does all of my tattoos, and I remember we were in conversation and someone asked him if he was watching the reality show about tattoos, and he's like, no. He's like, I don't watch that stuff, I do it every day. So I never used to be like that. I used to be totally into everything. Unsolved mysteries, forensic files, cold case files, anything that... But then I got away from it for a number of years, and I recently have found myself getting back into that again because it's in my blood. You know, it's in my DNA, and I just love it. So I'm glad that I found that passion again to get back into it. So I've been watching a lot more of these documentaries, and so then I talk about them, and hence this video on Charles Mills Manson. So this isn't an in-depth investigation or interview. This is basically off of what I just watched, the Manson documentary through the eyes of Linda Kasabian. And again, just a tremendous documentary. It really brought forth the emotion through her eyes. Now, some people will watch this and, you know, they'll say Linda Kasabian's a rat, or, you know, because she went along to both murders, but she was never charged with anything. She was given immunity. So call her what you will, but, I think that she is an incredibly brave person for what she did, and she gave tremendous insight to the life of the Charles Manson family and what it was like to be there and live there. And let's be honest, without her, and even Vincent Bugliosi, who prosecuted Manson, said they would have never prosecuted Manson. They would have never got a conviction if it wasn't for her testimony. So, again, she hasn't seeked out publicity, and she's tried to shun it all and gone into hiding and so on and so forth. But they tracked her down. The producers of this film, I think his name was Nick Godwin, he tracked her down and found her living in near poverty levels in a trailer park in 2009, and I'm sure they paid her, and that's probably one of the reasons she agreed to do the documentary. But again, I don't know that for sure, so I won't say that's a fact. But she did give this view, and it is a very emotional view of particularly the Tate murders, and a first-hand account of what happened, and to see her tell it, and then the recreation of that, it's something that I found myself getting chills when I was watching it, especially when she was outside and Abigail Folger ran out, and Patricia Krenwinkel was chasing her and ended up stabbing on the lawn. And she recounted hearing Abigail Folger crying for her mommy. A grown woman, knowing she's dying, calling for her mommy. Wow. Can't even imagine. But I got a couple of things that I wrote down here that I just want to go through. Number one is about Charles Manson himself. If you're watching this, you probably already know much about him. You probably know more about him than I do. I'm no expert on Manson, and I don't ever claim to be. But I will say, to me, from the research that I did, and, from the, interviews, I had spoke at length with one of the family member, Diane Lake. We went to dinner, and I quizzed her, 20 times over about Manson. And from what I get, he was a con artist, a little short guy, but he had charisma, and people followed him, and he was saying the right things. In this documentary, not only does Linda Kasabian, but I think Catherine Scher, who goes by Gypsy or went by Gypsy, spoke of him being such a great musician. And, I don't see that. I've listened to his music, but, it was a different era then. So, to them, his words took effect. Like, there was a scene where, and this happened almost daily, according to Diane Lake, who I spoke with. And also Linda Kasabian said that they would sit around and he'd play his guitar or just talk to them like a preacher. And the words that he spoke, to me, it was just like, are you freaking kidding me? I'd tell this guy to, take a hike. But it was a different era. And they were very vulnerable. They were 20-year-old, 19-year-old kids. And they were on drugs as well. So I'm sure all that played into why he was able to gain control of them and listen to him the way that they did, and ultimately murder for him. So here you have Charles Manson. I do believe in the theory of helter skelter. Now I got a lot of comments in my Diane Lake interview. How it wasn't helter skelter. It was a drug deal with Bobby Busele and Gary Hinman that went wrong, and they were trying to get Bobby out of jail for killing Hinman, and that's why the murders took place. Hey, everybody has their own opinions and theories, so I'm not going to knock you for that. Just as you should not knock me for my opinion that I believe Vincent Bugliosi. I believe Linda Kasabian. I believe Catherine Scher. I believe all these members that say it was helter skelter and it was about creating a race war between the blacks and the whites, and the blacks would win, but they would not know how to take the reins of leadership because they were too stupid, according to Manson. They would look to Whitey again to take over the power, and it would be Manson and his family who were living in a bottomless pit in the desert, blah, 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 blah. And he was getting all this information from the Beatles' Helter Skelter song and the whole White Album. And I've listened to the White Album. It's good music. It's nowhere near Elvis. To me, you're either a Beatles fan or you're an Elvis fan, just like you're a Star Wars fan or you're a Rocky fan. You hardly find any crossovers there. I'm an Elvis guy myself. But I did listen to the Beatles' White Album, and I listened to other Beatles albums as well. But you have songs like Sexy Sadie, Susan Atkins was Sadie, Helter Skelter, obviously, Piggies. So they said that Manson would listen over and over and over again to this album, and it was talking to him, telling him to commit these crimes and so on and so forth. Let's step back and look at this as a motive. You have a lot of believers that say that that is not true. How do you determine truth in a motive? Well, I think what you have to do is just what Bugliosi's investigative team did, and that is interview everybody. So let's say you interview all family members. Let's say at the time in 1969, I believe there was 32 adults living there and like 10 children. You would interview them and talk to them and ask them specifically about Helter Skelter, him listening to the Beatles. What was his teachings, his preachings? What was he saying? And when you have a multitude of these individuals all saying that it was Helter Skelter, and you have maybe one or two saying it was a drug deal, trying to get Bobby Buscema out of jail because he had killed Gary Hinman on orders from Manson, you take the majority, okay? And that's what you go with, and then you try to prove that theory. And I believe, obviously, they did that at trial, or Manson would not have been convicted. Well, no, I take that back. That's not true. Because you don't need motive to convict somebody or arrest somebody. But that helps at trial because the jurors want to know why were these committed. And here you have you have 2 days worth of murders. 7 people dead. People want to know why. What was the motive? So, yes, Bugliosi, in his mind, I'm sure, had to come up with a motive to present the jury. And he didn't just make that up out of thin air. He's not sitting at home smoking on a roach thinking, wow, this Beatles song's awesome. I bet you this is why Manson committed these murders. Come on. He's a professional. He's one of the best attorneys this country has ever seen. And he interviewed people. He got the reason of why it was taking place and why those 2 days of murders took place. And he presented that. And I believe that to be fact. So that is why crime scene, I'm going to get into that next. That's why the crime scenes are very important. So let's talk about the crime scenes. Let's first of all, Tate LaBianca murder. Okay, or Tate murder. LaBianca's was the second night. I believe it was August 9th, 1969. Tex, Susan Atkins, Patricia Crenwick, and Linda Kasabian go out to commit these murders. According to Kasabian, it doesn't look like they knew why, but Tex did. But the rest of the 3 girls did not know why they were going out. It became very apparent when Tex, with some rope over his shoulder and carrying a pair of bolt cutters, parked the car, walked up into the woods, and cut the telephone cords. And now they know something is not right. They used to go on what they were called creepy crawl missions, where they would sneak into people's house, rearrange their furniture, steal some stuff, and never murder. Apparently, at least Linda believed that that's what they were doing. But this was different. And then they go into the house. Linda's told to stay out back. They go in. This awful, horrendous, brutal murder. They begin. She describes hearing these blood-curdling screams. Couldn't tell if they were man or woman, just screams. She sees a gentleman who later is identified as Wojciech Forkowski coming out of the house and looking into her eyes. And she's crying, she's weeping as she's telling this story, that she knew he was dying. And he looked right into her eyes before continuing on and collapsing, and Tex come running out and stabbing him and stabbing him and stabbing him and stabbing him. And to hear her describe it.
And I saw a man, and he had blood all over his face, and he looked right into my eyes, and he was dying. But in his eyes, what I saw was that I felt he was dying because of me.
Wow. It's something. As an investigator or a cold case investigator, sometimes you look at crime scene photos and you try to, and I know there's people listening right now going to know exactly what I'm saying. You're staring at it and you're like, what happened here? If only I could be a fly on the wall to know what happened. What happened here? And you stare at it forever, trying to figure out why this is placed here and this is there. Here you have the answers. You have somebody that was there. So to hear that coming from a first-hand account is just always chilling. But it's always so beneficial to the investigator, because then the pieces start coming together and the puzzle starts forming a picture of what happened. So at the Tate murders, Sharon Tate, Wojciech Forkowski, Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, who was the hairstylist for Jim Morrison, if nobody knew that, and Stephen Parent all lost their lives on that night. And the madness didn't end there, because the second night they went out and chose another house at random. The first house that they chose, I believe, was owned by Terry Melcher, who had rejected Manson from a recording contract, but he had moved out, and Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski had moved in, and so that house I don't think was chosen at random. The second house, they had driven around looking for the perfect place that was kind of secluded. They found it in Rosemary and Lino LaBianca's residence, and they went in, and a different group this time. It was Tex, Leslie, and Patricia Krenwinkel. So it appears Patricia Krenwinkel was the only person that was involved in both murders. Actual physical stabbing, committing the act of murder on both occasions. So to that crime scene I want to talk about, because this is crucial. As a crime scene investigator, you would go there, you would discover these two bodies, and what you would see is pillowcases over their heads. This is why a first-hand account is so enlightening and beneficial, and just it erases all doubt. Because when you go there, if I would have went there to that crime scene, or if I would have got the photos years later and I would have seen, okay, they got pillowcases over their heads, remorse, because that's what people teach you. That's what all these so-called profilers, and there are some decent profilers, but there's a lot of amateur people that don't know what they're talking about, and they'll just spew out nonsense without knowing facts. So what I'm getting at is, here you're looking at this, you have pillowcases over your head. You've been told for years. The reason that they cover, the offender covers the victim's faces is out of remorse. There's some sort of remorse. Well, that's not fucking true. Not in this case, huh? So if you as a crime scene investigator, you see this, you can use that as like, not a tool, but you can say, okay, it's a possibility that this person has remorse. But it's very possible that has nothing to do with it, because look at the Manson killings for Rosemary and Lino LaBianca. They had pillowcases over their head. These motherfuckers had no remorse, right? They even said it. You know, Sharon Tate, she's 8 months pregnant. And Susan Atkins is stabbing her, and she's like, please don't kill me. Don't kill my baby. And she says, look, bitch, I have no remorse for you or your kid. There's no remorse there. So this crime scene interpretation is very important. You can't always say 100% because it looks this way or because this happened. It's got to be somebody close to him, somebody that knows him. It's remorse. Not true. Now, one of the things that, if you dug a little deeper on those pillowcases, that you would see is that there were lamps nearby, and those cords from those lamps were tied around the neck. Again, as an investigator, you would say, well, okay, maybe they were trying to strangle them, control them. Let's go with that theory. Okay, yeah, they put that on around their necks, and they were trying to strangle them, and then that didn't work. So they tried putting in a pillowcase and suffocating them, and that didn't work. So they ended up stabbing them. Well, you're completely off base, and you are trying to make this theory fit when it's not even close to being the truth. Because if you listen to Linda Kasabian or other family members, they will tell you, or Tex Watkins, he was there. He said the pillowcases were put on their heads and the lamp cords were tied around to keep the pillowcases tight. How would you have known that just by looking at the photographs? You could try to interpret it 1,000,000 times, and you will. You'll lay in bed thinking about it. But you have a first-hand account of what really happened. So, am I a fan of immunity? You betcha. When it will put all the pieces of the puzzle together for you in your head, and you have to give immunity to somebody, let me tell you something. Those people, Linda Kasabian, she didn't have immunity. She lived with that guilt to this day. And she hears those screams to this day. So, yeah, maybe she wasn't in prison, and, you know, she's not living but in prison hell, but she's living in her own personal hell. I can guarantee that. So, great movie. Vincent Bugliosi wrote me a letter pretty much on his deathbed, and I'll never forget getting it. And I have it framed. I don't have it up right now, but it's somewhere framed, and it was handwritten, and now, you know, which gives it a little bit more characteristic, because it's not an email, it's not typed, handwritten and written and sent to me. Just, you know, praising me about some things, and, you know, so on and so forth. I just to think that this guy took the time to write me. This was probably 10 years ago. So at the time, just a young whippersnapper that just getting into all this, cold cases, mysteries, and stuff, and to praise me was something I'll never forget. Diane Lake. In this documentary, through Linda Kasabian's eyes, again, it's through her eyes, but I believe it. She definitely is credible in my eyes. By the way, her emotions took place when she was talking about those murders. I mean, no doubt in my mind. But one of the stories that they told, she didn't tell this, I think Bugliosi told it, about how Manson in prison, I think he was actually a juvenile, so it might have been in reform school. He sodomized a guy by putting a knife to his throat from behind and sodomizing him. And when he was telling that story, it reminded me so much of a story that Diane Lake had told me as well, how he was very angry at her one time and took her out into this field, and he sodomized her the same way from behind with his hand around her throat. He didn't have a knife, but when he was done, he said to her, "That's the way we did it in prison." Wow. But yet they followed this guy. He tell him to go murder, and they did it. Unreal. Unique human being, much like David Koresh. Only so often these people come around that have so much charisma, and people will do what they say. I guess there's other people like that in the world. They channel that energy in other directions. Look at Jim Morrison, for example. I'm sure he could have been a cult leader and had his own family if he wanted to. He spoke these elegant words, poetry. And he obviously was a musician 1,000 times better than Manson. So if he wanted to, he could have done the same thing, but he channeled it elsewhere. Manson, he was a criminal. There's no other way to describe him. So he channeled that through his criminal activities and to basically mind control these young adults. And again, I don't understand how they followed him. He has followers to this day. I'm no follower. I think he's intriguing, and I want to know more about how and why, those type of things. But there's people that just love this guy, and they think he was framed, he shouldn't be in jail, all this nonsense. Hey, you have your own beliefs. That's fine, but I don't see it. He's just a petty crook to me. That was at the right place at the right time in the right era in San Francisco to get these people to follow him. And that's what I think of Manson. So, is he this genius? No. Is he the second coming of Jesus and the devil wrapped in one like he proclaimed? No, he's not. He again is just a con man, a criminal, and somebody that ruined a lot of lives. And no matter if you're a follower of him and you believe in him and you think he did nothing wrong, you cannot deny that this man ruined a lot of lives. A lot. That ripple effect took a lot of people out. So I don't care that you like him or you're a follower of him. He ruined lives, and that cannot be disputed. Linda Kasabian, so what happened to her? As of 2017, she was living in Tacoma, Washington, in a rundown section of town, and a poverty type of apartment. She has been in and out of trouble since the trial, and nothing like Squeaky Fromm where she tried to kill a president or anything like that. She once got arrested for, I think it was in 1980, flashing a set of bikers. I don't know who in the heck would have turned her in for that, but a more serious crime is she in 1996, her and her daughter were both arrested, I believe, for selling meth and possibly cocaine. So she didn't turn it around too much. But I will say She's had to live with a lot of shit. Just like a lot of us have. Granted. And I don't give her a pass. But maybe I do. You know, maybe. Sad waste of life. And again, you can blame Manson. But I think maybe Linda Kasabian needs to look in a mirror and blame herself, just like Leslie Van Houten, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Tex Watkins, Charles Manson. They got nobody to blame but themselves. It's easy to point to blame. Yes, Manson was the instigator behind this. He did these things to control them, but ultimately it comes down to you. You have the right. You can control things in your life. So I'm not a big proponent of pointing fingers and saying I'm not here because of so and so. My life is bad because of you. I certainly know people like that, and I think that when you do that, you're a weaker person. You need to take ownership for your own failures and take responsibility for your own actions. So, with that being said, let me think if there's anything else I want to talk about in regards to Charles Manson. I would still love to go out to the Spawn Ranch area. I know that's been destroyed and stuff, but go to the caves and look for some. I'm a big believer in going to the places where you're investigating these crimes. So for cold cases that I get in, it's like the Zodiac case. I wanted to go to Lake Berryessa. I wanted to go to San Francisco, at Washington and Cherry, where Paul Stein was murdered, and we did. And to be there, even 50 years later, to stand at that intersection, knowing that I just spent a year investigating this, reading reports, looking at photographs, but now I'm here. And then you walk that route that Zodiac took, down to the Presidio and disappearing into the park. And you're walking that at the same time, at night. It's eerie. But it gives you, I don't know how to explain it. It gives you like just a feeling like, man, you feel closer to the crime when you're there. And I don't believe in psychics. I have psychics reach out to me all the time, I don't believe in that. But it does something to me as an investigator. It might not. I know it doesn't everybody else. But for me, it seems to help the investigation. For me when I'm there, I feel it. I feel part of it. Like I can envision it. And I don't know. It's something I can't explain, but I love doing it. So I'd love to go to Spawn Ranch and just check out that area. I'm in Pennsylvania. It's California. I should have went out there when I was out there for filming for Zodiac. But I digress. Any of you want to take me on a trip out to Spawn Ranch, get a hold of me. Maybe I'll take you up on that. Next week, this Thursday, Discovery Science Channel. I'll be on there. 10 episodes. It's called, TV show series is called Conspiracies Decoded. I will be talking about a lot of history's mysteries, but a lot of murder. Jack the Ripper, Sam Shepard, things like that. Check it out. You never know what's on there, but it's Discovery Science Channel, 10 o'clock this Thursday, December the 3rd, 2020. And let me know what you think about that. Again, great documentary. Shout out to the producers, Nick Godwin, of this Manson documentary. The best Manson documentary that I think I've seen them all. This is the only one that kind of brought a little tear to my eye because of Kasabian's story, and seeing Wojtek Frykowski and Abigail Folger in that recreation getting stabbed, and her calling for her mommy.
And I saw a woman in a white dress, and she had blood all over her, and she was screaming, and she was calling for her mom, and I saw Katie stabbing her.
Man, just powerful, emotional. Kudos to the producers to be able to get that story and show it in that way. Very powerful, and I'd recommend anybody, go see it. It's on, I watched it on YouTube. It's under Manson, and unbelievable. So that's my thoughts. Charles Manson. I'll probably be doing a second video maybe when I dive in a little deeper with Manson. But incredible documentary, fascinating individuals. Oh, I want to end with this. Somebody asked me my thoughts on, because Leslie Van Houten was just in the news yesterday about getting denied parole. What are my thoughts on that? I'll be happy to give you my thoughts on that. I don't think they should get out of prison ever. Do I think they would ever kill again? I do not. Not at all. They were supposed to be dead. California abolished the death penalty. And now, do I feel bad? Yes. I feel bad for Leslie Van Houten. I feel bad for Patricia Krenwinkel. I feel bad for Tex Watson. I feel bad for Susan Atkins. She has since passed away. So has Charles Manson. But they have to be responsible for their acts. I don't care that they were 20 years old and they were young and they, were under the spell of Manson. I don't care. Every individual is responsible for their own actions. They have paid their price, okay? But law is law. We have rules for a reason. If you don't have laws, you have chaos. We can't have chaos in a democratic society. Now, have they paid their price enough to get out of prison? Again, my answer is no. And I'm with the biggest advocate of this, Sharon Tate's sister, Doris, who attends the parole meetings, and she's adamantly against it. And I'm with her 100%. And I feel bad sitting there listening to Leslie Van Houten. I know she's remorseful, but it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, Leslie. You committed this crime. The crime called for your death, which I don't know if I believe in the death penalty, to be honest with you, but it called for your death. That got abolished, and you got sentenced to life in prison. You're sentenced to life in prison because you took somebody else's life. That is fair in my eyes. I don't care how many degrees that you get while you're in prison. I don't care that you were a model citizen in prison. Again, those are your choices. If you want to wake up every morning in prison and not have a goal, not have motivation, so be it. But if you want to make something of yourself and said, you know what? I've been a waste of life. I've taken what God's given me and I've thrown it all away. So while I'm in this place, I'm going to make the best of it by getting my GED, by getting a college degree, by helping others. Good. I'm glad that you're doing that. Does not excuse the fact that you've taken somebody's life maliciously, with purpose, with intent. It doesn't excuse it. You can't say, well, look at everything that I have done while I'm in prison, so I should be let out. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, and I'm sorry. I have no doubt that Leslie Van Houten would probably be a great citizen upon her release. She would never commit another crime. I don't care. The rules call for your life in prison. You took somebody else's life. They don't get to have them back. you don't get to have your freedom back. So that's my story. That's my opinions. Like it, don't like it. Honestly, I don't give a shit. It's my opinion. Just like you have your opinions. So if you want to write in the comment section and all that you want, I'm okay with it. It's your opinions. And these are mine on Charles Manson, Linda Kasabian, Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Diane Lake, and the rest of the members of the Manson family. Until next time, Maine's out.